The receipt slipped through my fingers, the paper coarse and crinkled, as if it held secrets I wasn't ready to confront. I stood in the kitchen, the aroma of morning coffee mingling with a sense of dread that clung to me like an old coat, familiar yet suffocating. The numbers printed on that slip were foreign, a jigsaw puzzle piece that didn't fit into my life. I stared out the window toward the street, where the sun cast long shadows over the sidewalk. My mind raced. I could feel the pulse in my temples quicken. What was this receipt doing here? A motel room booked under an unfamiliar name at a time when I was supposed to be at work. My hands trembled slightly as I folded it again, tucking it into my pocket like a ticking time bomb. Kate entered, her presence instantly changing the air between us. She moved with purpose, but paused at the sight of me. "You okay?" she asked, her voice laced with concern, but shadowed by something more, a hint of defensiveness. "Just got this," I said, pulling out the receipt. Her eyes widened briefly before she collected herself, masking whatever flicker of guilt might have surfaced. "You've been working too hard," she replied, softly, brushing past me to pour her coffee. "Let's not get worked up over nothing." But it felt like something, like a crack in our shared reality. I could almost hear the echoes of our past arguments reverberate in that tiny space between us. My instinct screamed for action. I needed clarity and truth. "I'm going to check it out," I announced, determination flooding my veins like caffeine. Kate turned sharply, her expression shifting from concern to alarm. "Bob, wait," she started, but stopped short when she saw my resolve. "I'll be back soon," I said firmly, and stepped outside, leaving her in a kitchen filled with simmering tension. The drive felt interminable as road signs blurred by and thoughts swirled chaotically in my mind. Each mile marker ticked off was another reminder of how quickly things could unravel. The roadside motel loomed ahead like an unwelcome specter from our past, a place meant for fleeting encounters rather than lasting commitments. When I arrived at the motel's entrance, something about its peeling paint and flickering neon sign sent shivers down my spine. The desk clerk looked up from behind a screen filled with receipts and empty coffee cups. He had an air of boredom about him that quickly shifted to curiosity as I approached. "I'm here to check on a reservation," I said cautiously, feeling every eye twitch around me. The clerk's gaze boring into me, as if he could read every thought swirling in my head. "What name?" he asked, without looking up. "Under Bob Hayes," I replied hesitantly. The clerk tapped away at his keyboard before glancing back at me with raised eyebrows. "You mean this one?" He slid a printout across the counter, my burner number etched clearly alongside Kate's name, the confirmation taunting me like a cruel joke. I felt my stomach churn as new information crashed over me like icy water. "That can't be right," I protested weakly. "There must be some mistake." "Was booked from your home Wi-Fi while you were at work," he confirmed flatly, not bothering to mask his disinterest in my predicament. My heart tightened around those words like vice grips. It felt personal now. It felt real. As anger surged within me, memories flooded back. Late-night phone calls muffled behind closed doors and whispers exchanged just beyond earshot. Without thinking further, I grabbed my phone and texted Kate. "Where are you?" The seconds dragged painfully as silence hung thick around me like fog. Before long, she replied, "At work." But there was no comfort in her words. They rang hollow against everything I'd uncovered today. In that moment of revelation, everything tilted on its axis. Trust shattered beneath weighty implications, each word now tinged with suspicion and doubt. I made a decision then, a choice that would alter everything between us. I would confront them both directly, instead of waiting for explanations wrapped in half-truths or excuses worn thin by familiarity. As adrenaline coursed through me like wildfire ignited by betrayal's breath, I turned back toward my car, every step toward home heavy with purpose, but fraught with uncertainty about what awaited me there behind those walls we built together over years spent entwined in routine and love's embrace. Yet even as determination surged within me like bright flames licking at dry wood waiting for ignition, one question lingered unasked. What truths would unfold once that door creaked open? Helen's voice rang out stronger than I'd ever heard it. "I won't stand by and let this happen, Bob." The determination in her eyes was like a lightning bolt striking through the haze of uncertainty that had shrouded our lives for too long. It was as if the years of my legal battles, every case fought, every setback endured, had culminated in this very moment, a moment I had thought I would have to face alone. I felt a wave of urgency wash over me. "What do you mean? We need to be careful, Helen. They're watching us." My heart thudded against my chest. The stakes were higher than ever, and we couldn't afford missteps. But she wouldn't back down. No more waiting. No more meetings in the shadows. She stepped closer, lowering her voice but raising her resolve. "We need to go public. Rally support. Use what we have." Just then, Marcus appeared at the doorframe, his silhouette stark against the dim light behind him. He was fresh off the streets where he'd been gathering signatures for our cause. His breath came heavy with urgency and excitement. "I heard what you said," he grinned, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. "This is it, the petition. We can take it to the city council tomorrow." My mind raced as I considered the implications of Helen's words mixed with Marcus's enthusiasm. Going public could either be our salvation or our downfall. But the sound of injustice still echoed around us, muffled yet persistent, like distant thunder. "Do you really think they'll listen?" I asked cautiously, weighing each word carefully. Marcus shrugged but remained hopeful. "If enough people stand with us, if we show them we're not afraid." His youthful energy crackled in the air like static electricity. It was infectious. Helen turned to me, her eyes glimmering with a fierce brightness that was hard to dismiss. "We can't just sit here anymore," she insisted again, more passionately this time. A surge of resolve filled me as I considered her perspective. What if this was our moment? A leap into unknown waters where courage outweighed fear. "All right," I finally said, feeling like an old ship's anchor being pulled free from its mooring after years of rust and stagnation. Helen smiled, a mix of relief and determination, and Marcus nodded vigorously as if he had just been handed a baton in a relay race. But even as excitement bubbled up within me, I couldn't shake off the nagging worry about potential repercussions, what might come crashing down on us once we threw open those doors to scrutiny. The doubt lingered like smoke from an extinguished candle. "Okay then." Helen started organizing the papers on the cluttered kitchen table, our makeshift command center filled with coffee mugs and takeout containers strewn about like remnants of our battle fatigue. Her fingers moved deftly over each sheet, like a painter preparing a canvas for something bold and beautiful. As she worked meticulously through notes and contact lists, Marcus tapped away on his phone, reaching out to allies who would help amplify our message. My heart raced faster than my thoughts could keep up. We were on the brink of something monumental. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door, a sharp sound that cut through our preparations like a knife slicing through fog. We froze for an instant. An electric tension hung thick in the air between us. "Who could that be?" Helen whispered as she exchanged concerned glances with me and Marcus. I approached cautiously and peered through the peehole, my pulse quickening at what awaited me on the other side. 3 figures standing just beyond our threshold. strangers whose intentions were cloaked in uncertainty. "What do you see?" Helen asked softly from behind me. "Three people. They don't look friendly." My stomach twisted at their presence. Something told me they weren't here for social pleasantries or solidarity meetings. She stepped forward beside me now, every inch of her body radiating bravery, while also betraying shadows of apprehension beneath her skin. "Maybe they want to talk. Or maybe they want to intimidate us," I replied, quietly but firmly, before turning back toward them again. In that instant, everything felt precarious, a fragile balance hanging between hope and fear, and I realized how much depended on what happened next at our doorstep. The knock came again, louder, more insistent, as if
"I'm not doing this anymore," she said slowly. Her voice carried an unexpected strength that cut through tension like a knife slicing fresh bread warm from an oven. "I want to tell you everything." My heart raced anew, not out of fear, but anticipation tinged with dread, because while clarity beckoned closer now more than ever before, so did uncertainty linger just beyond reach. As we stood on that precipice together, the three of us, I felt the air grow heavy with expectation mingled with trepidation. Secrets, long kept, threatened to rise like steam from boiling water, ready to spill over if not contained properly soon enough. In that charged moment, filled with potential consequences looming ahead, what truth would emerge from this tangled mess? And would it be enough for any kind reconciliation? Would honor ever be restored amidst these jagged shards left behind? Each question danced around us relentlessly, as if mocking our inability to grasp hold tightly enough without letting go completely. And no matter how deeply I breathed, trying calmness amid chaos, it remained elusive, still floating somewhere just out of reach. I felt the weight of the moment settle on my shoulders, like an old, heavy coat. My daughter Helen stared at the stack of papers in front of her, each page a reminder of how far we had come and how much was still left to fight for. The room was thick with tension. I could almost taste it, metallic and bitter. "Dad," she said finally, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "What if we lose this case? What if all this work ends up being for nothing?" I glanced around our small office, cluttered with legal briefs and framed photos of our family's milestones. There was a sense of urgency pulsating in the air. I took a deep breath and leaned forward to meet her gaze. "We've already made a difference just by standing up," I replied. "But if you let fear dictate your decisions, then you're giving away more than just this case." She looked down, her fingers trembling ever so slightly as they traced the edges of a document, our latest attempt to challenge that unjust law. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, reminding me that time was slipping away from us. Just then, there was a knock at the door, sharp like a gunshot in the quiet atmosphere. My heart raced as I exchanged glances with Helen. Who could it be at this hour? I opened the door to find an unfamiliar man standing there, tall and imposing, but with an air of urgency about him. His dark eyes scanned the room quickly before settling on us. "Bob Hayes?" he asked, his voice low but firm. "Yes," I replied cautiously. "I'm here on behalf of some community leaders who've been following your case closely," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "They want to offer their support." Helen straightened up in her chair, suddenly intrigued by the stranger's presence. I gestured for him to sit while trying to gauge his intentions. He pulled out a folder from under his arm and laid it on the table between us. "This is what we've gathered," he continued as he flipped through pages filled with names, people ready to join our cause. Your fight has resonated with many who feel powerless. I could see Helen's expression change. Hope flickered in her eyes like candlelight against darkness. She leaned closer to examine the documents as if they were golden tickets to a new beginning. "Dad," she said slowly, "what if we could rally everyone behind us? This could change everything." In that moment, I saw determination harden in her features, the very same fire that had sparked my own journey years ago. "You're right," I said decisively. "We can't afford to back down now." The atmosphere shifted palpably as we prepared for action, a tidal wave building beneath our feet, ready to crash forward and reshape everything around us. With newfound purpose coursing through me, I reached for my phone to begin making calls while Helen jotted down notes furiously. But as we turned back towards our unexpected ally, he hesitated for a second too long, his brow furrowed and mouth twisted into something resembling doubt or fear. "Wait," he said finally, his voice dropping lower than before. "There's something you need to know about those leaders." A tense silence fell over us, as my heart pounded like a war drum in my chest. Did we dare trust this man? Would sharing our plans put everything we'd fought for at risk? The door creaked slightly behind him, as if hinting at secrets yet untold, leaving me wondering what shadows lurked just beyond our reach.
The gravel crunched under my feet as I walked toward the roadside motel. The air was thick with the scent of gasoline and fried food from a nearby diner, but my focus was on the task at hand. My mind raced with questions, each one heavier than the last. I could see the flickering neon sign overhead struggling to stay lit against the gathering dusk. My gut twisted as I approached the check-in desk, recalling the receipt I had found hidden in a pile of documents at home. It was like unearthing a small landmine buried beneath routine life. Each step toward that desk felt like an echo of dread. The clerk eyed me with a mix of indifference and curiosity. "Can I help you?" he asked, barely looking up from his screen. I cleared my throat, trying to steady my voice. "I'm looking for a reservation made under this number." I slid my burner phone across the counter like it was a card in a high-stakes poker game. He frowned as he typed, his fingers dancing over the keys with alarming speed. The silence between us stretched taut, almost palpable. Then came his words, cutting through the tension. "This reservation was made from your home Wi-Fi." My stomach dropped. There it was, the revelation that twisted everything inside me. In that moment, I could feel the weight of betrayal settling on my shoulders like an unwelcomed cloak. A part of me wanted to turn and leave, but another part propelled me forward, toward whatever awaited me behind that door. With every heartbeat echoing in my ears, I stepped into the dimly lit room, its stale air clinging to me like cobwebs. There it was, a familiar sight that sent shockwaves through my system. My shirt draped over a chair, casual and careless as if it had been waiting for me all along. I clenched my fists at my sides, feeling the rough fabric of my palm against each finger. It grounded me in this surreal moment. How could something so innocuous be tied to such treachery? The shirt had once felt like home against my skin. Now it was just a reminder of what might be lost. "Bob?" The voice broke through my thoughts, sending chills down my spine. Helen stood by the bed, alongside someone I recognized only vaguely, her coworker Sam, with an expression that spoke volumes about secrets shared and trust shattered. "What's going on here?" I demanded, letting anger lace through every syllable. Helen's eyes darted between Sam and me as she opened her mouth to speak, but hesitated, searching for words that would not come easily. The tension hung in the air like smoke after a fire. We were all caught in its grip. Sam shifted uncomfortably beside her, his gaze avoiding mine entirely. "We can explain," Helen finally said, her voice trembling slightly. an indication of fear or guilt, maybe both. "Explain, this isn't some misunderstanding," I shot back, frustration seeping into my tone as I gestured wildly toward the shirt. "That's mine! You took it out of our house?" Sam's face turned pale as he stepped back slightly from Helen, revealing just how unprepared he truly was for this confrontation. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," Helen continued defensively, but her words sounded hollow against the backdrop of betrayal echoing between us. A decision began brewing within me, a determination to confront this head-on rather than retreat into silence or allow them time to spin their web of excuses further. "This ends now," I declared firmly. Helen's face softened slightly before she took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead, and perhaps realizing she had underestimated how far I'd go to protect what mattered most to me. But then came a shift, a subtle change in atmosphere as Sam glanced at Helen with uncertainty etched across his features while she stood resolute before him and me alike. There was something vulnerable yet defiant in her stance. Suddenly, she didn't seem scared anymore, but rather aware of how much power lay in her hands now. This choice would define us all.
The air in the motel room felt thick, almost suffocating. I could hear the faint hum of a nearby highway, but it seemed distant, like a world I no longer belonged to. My palms were clammy as I gripped the burner phone tightly, its cheap plastic digging into my skin. I stepped further inside, and there it was. A shirt I thought had been lost weeks ago, draped over a chair like an accusation waiting to be voiced. The sight of it sent a jolt through me. Every fiber of my being screamed for answers. It was as if that shirt held secrets of its own, whispering truths I couldn't yet grasp. Kate stood by the window, her silhouette framed by the fading daylight. She turned slowly, and her eyes widened when they met mine. Sam lingered behind her, shifting uncomfortably from one foot to the other. There was something about his presence that felt wrong, like an unwelcome shadow cast over my already fractured trust. "Bob," she started, but her voice faltered as if she didn't know where to begin. I cut her off. "Why is my shirt here?" The words tumbled out, sharp and jagged like broken glass. Kate opened her mouth to speak, but hesitated. "I can explain," she finally said, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her confidence. "No," I replied firmly, stepping closer until I could see the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "You don't need to explain anything, because this isn't just about a shirt anymore." Sam shifted again, his discomfort palpable as he glanced between us. "Maybe we should all just take a breath here." "Shut up," I snapped at him, before turning back to Kate. My heart raced as anger took root in my chest, mingling with despair like oil and water. "I saw your reservation," I continued, brandishing the burner phone as if it were a weapon. "It was made from our home network while I was at work." Kate flinched at the mention of our home Wi-Fi, the very foundation of our lives together, now twisted into something sinister. Her expression hardened slightly as she processed what that meant. "You're wrong," she insisted weakly, but even she didn't sound convinced. Then came the weight of Sam's silence pressing against us, like an unseen force. Had he known? The thought ignited another flare of fury within me. "Doesn't matter who's right or wrong," Sam interjected again, attempting to diffuse the tension with a half-hearted smile that fell flat on his face. But it mattered. Everything mattered now. Who booked this room? The question slipped out before I could swallow it back down. Kate looked away, focusing on the peeling wallpaper instead of meeting my gaze directly. It was clear she wouldn't answer without prompting. "Was it you?" I pressed on. "Or was it him?" My finger jabbed toward him as if he were merely an extension of my anger, rather than a person standing beside her. "It wasn't Sam. It was me." Her voice broke on those final words, raw and exposed under my scrutiny. A hollow silence filled the space between us as those words echoed around me like thunder rumbling after lightning strikes, sharp and unmistakable.
Honor hung in the balance like a precarious scale, tipping toward betrayal. "What do you mean it was me?" My voice dropped dangerously low, barely above a whisper yet heavy with unspoken implications. She hesitated again before speaking slowly, as if testing each word for damage. I needed to feel something different. There was an honesty in her admission that cut deeper than any lie could have managed. "That's your excuse?" Rage simmered beneath my skin, each heartbeat pulsed with betrayal's bitter taste. But then came clarity, laced with pain. Could I
Tears shimmered, glistening under fading rays, sunlight spilling through cracks, walls surrounding us, reminding how quickly things change. Even moments once cherished can fade away, replaced feelings, betrayal, doubt, despair, leaving behind only echoes, past haunting present, decisions made without considering consequences, looming large ahead, waiting catch up sooner, later, inevitably demanding reckoning come forth, eventually seeking closure. Unreconciled conflicts, unresolved, still festering beneath surface, waiting release somehow. In that moment, it became clear whatever shattered honor remained tethered between us lay irrevocably altered beyond repair, torn apart, threads woven delicately, connecting two souls intertwined, once bound together, forever changed, irrevocably shaped, choices made, driven instincts, devoid reason, logic, guiding paths taken amidst swirling chaos. Left behind remnants, dreams shattered, dreams scattered everywhere, lost forever, never truly found again. The judge slammed his gavel, a thunderous sound that echoed through the courtroom and jolted me from my thoughts. I felt the weight of the moment pressing down like a thick blanket. The air hung heavy with anticipation, an electric charge that made the hairs on my neck stand up. "Order in the court!" he barked, glaring at the murmurs rising from the gallery. My heart raced as I exchanged anxious glances with Helen, who sat just a few seats away. She was fidgeting with her glasses, fingers trembling, her normally composed demeanor fraying at the edges. I needed to act quickly. I rose from my seat, planting my feet firmly on the floor as if it were quicksand threatening to swallow me whole. "Your Honor," I called out, voice steady, despite the chaos swirling inside me. A few heads turned, curiosity flickered in their eyes. Then came a new voice from the back. A young woman with fiery red hair and sharp features stepped forward. Her presence was magnetic. She carried an air of confidence that seemed to fill the room. "I have evidence," she announced, boldly, clutching a folder tightly against her chest. Helen's eyes widened as she recognized the newcomer. "Lena?" she whispered, disbelief coloring her tone. Lena had been our intern months ago. We hadn't seen her since she moved away for law school. With newfound determination, Helen straightened in her chair. "Let her speak," she commanded, her voice cutting through the noise like a hot knife through butter. The energy shifted in the room as Lena approached the bench, ready to present what could change everything. This was it, the turning point we desperately needed. But as Lena began to lay out her findings, I caught a glimpse of something in her eyes, a flicker of doubt that left me wondering what else lay beneath this sudden twist of fate.
The muffled sounds of the highway faded behind me as I stepped into the cramped confines of the roadside motel. The faint hum of a distant air conditioning unit droned on, mixing with the rustling of plastic bags and the faint scent of cheap cleaning supplies. It was all too familiar, yet disconcerting, like stepping into an old, forgotten memory that had been buried deep. I approached the front desk, a knot tightening in my stomach. The clerk looked up, his expression shifting to one of recognition. "You're here about the reservation?"
he asked, tapping away at his keyboard. My eyes scanned the cluttered lobby while I nodded. Each second felt drawn out like taffy as I braced for whatever awaited me. Name? He prompted, but before I could respond, he continued. It's under your burner number. My breath caught in my throat as realization struck me, a cold wave washing over my skin. Someone had used my number to book this room while I was at work. It wasn't just a coincidence, it felt deliberate. The door to the motel room creaked open behind me, and instinctively my head snapped around. There stood Helen, my wife, alongside a man I didn't recognize. His casual demeanor did little to quell the surge of anger bubbling within me. The shirt I thought I'd lost weeks ago hung limply on a chair beside them, an unwelcome reminder that something was terribly wrong. Helen started, her voice clipped and defensive. "Bob, I can explain." Yet her words felt empty against the backdrop of betrayal that suffocated me. The man shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between us like a deer caught in headlights. They were tangled in something far beyond what they could possibly articulate. "Explain what?" I shot back, fists clenching at my sides. "That you've been lying to me? That this isn't just some innocent get-together?" Helen's face paled as she glanced at her companion before focusing back on me with determination etched across her features. "This isn't what you think it is. Sam is he's helping with a project." Just then, everything clicked into place. The late nights at work, the hushed phone calls when I walked into the house unannounced. This wasn't just about trust, it was about honor, and mine felt trampled beneath their feet like discarded leaves. "Helping?" I echoed incredulously, trying to suppress the tremor in my voice. "What exactly? Because it looks more like you're both hiding something from me." And there it was. The sharp edge of accusation lingering in my words hung heavy between us. Helen hesitated for just a moment too long before taking a deep breath, as if steeling herself for battle. "You need to listen to me," she said firmly, locking eyes with me. "We've been working on civil rights initiatives together, something close to both our hearts, and it's led us here." Her proclamation hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle, faint and dissipating fast, but still illuminating hidden truths underneath layers of deception. I felt another wave rush through me. This time it ignited a flicker of hope alongside confusion and hurt. But before I could respond or even process what she'd said fully, Sam interjected softly but firmly. "We only booked this room because we needed somewhere private to discuss sensitive documents," he explained cautiously. "You have every right to be angry. I would be too. But we never meant for any of this to happen." Their expressions shifted slightly, an unspoken bond weaving between them that left me feeling like an outsider in my own life story. An unsettling warmth spread across my chest as doubt settled in. How much did they really share? How much it changed? As silence enveloped us again, I weighed Helen's words against everything else, the blurred lines of trust, now stretching thin and frayed, like an old rope ready to snap under pressure. Then came the decision point. Do I believe her? Do I let go of what feels like betrayal, or hold on to anger that keeps me anchored but isolated? With each passing second weighing heavier than lead, this moment demanded more than mere acceptance. It required courage. "I need you both to tell me everything," I finally said through gritted teeth, not out of desperation, but rather clarity born from pain and resilience alike. Helen nodded slowly while Sam spoke first again, a steady voice cutting through tension thick enough to slice with a knife. "We will," he promised earnestly. Their fates seemed entwined, not by romance, but by shared purpose, a mission so vital that perhaps it transcended whatever happened here tonight. But as their plans unfolded further, amidst whispers barely higher than murmurs, the kind that usually fade into echoes by the dim lights overhead, I couldn't shake off what still loomed overhead. Questions without answers waiting silently in the shadows. What other secrets lay buried beneath those carefully structured conversations? Would knowing bring healing, or merely deepen wounds already festering? The weight of uncertainty pressed down around us,
all options scattered like leaves blown by an unseen wind, and all we could do was confront whatever lay ahead together or apart. In that moment, suspended between past hurts and uncertain futures, hope flickered weakly amidst chaos, fragile yet persistent, as if it might find its way through darkness if only given half the chance. The door swung open, revealing Helen standing there, her brow furrowed with determination. I could see the resolve in her eyes as she glanced at me, a silent question hanging between us. It was like watching a dam about to burst. The pressure of unspoken words filled the air. I took a step forward, my heart racing as I sensed the weight of the moment pressing down on both of us. "Helen," I began, but she cut me off with a wave of her hand. She had made up her mind, and there was no turning back. "Bob, we need to confront this. It's not just about us anymore." Her voice trembled slightly, but held firm against the uncertainty that rippled through our home. The case we had been working on loomed larger than life, casting shadows over everything else. As I leaned against the kitchen table, its cool surface grounded me. I thought of all the nights spent poring over documents and testimonies. Each piece felt like another weight added to our shoulders. Helen stepped closer, her fingers brushing against the stack of papers, as if trying to draw strength from them. "Did you hear what they said?" she continued, urgency rising in her tone. "Those people out there are counting on us." She gestured vaguely toward the window, where our neighbors' lives carried on obliviously outside. Her words struck me harder than any closing argument ever could. My chest tightened. I felt the gravity of our responsibility more than ever. Just then, a loud commotion erupted from the street below. Someone shouting in anger pierced through my thoughts. I rushed to the window, pulling back the curtain slightly to glimpse what was happening. A crowd had gathered outside, voices raised in passionate protest against injustices that seemed too familiar after all these years. My stomach knotted at the sight. It reminded me of those tumultuous days decades ago when change seemed impossible, yet so desperately needed. "Helen," I turned back to her, urgency flooding my voice now. "This is escalating faster than we anticipated." She nodded sharply, determination etched across her faces like a well-rehearsed script. "Then we need to act now. We can't let fear dictate our next move." In that moment of clarity, Helen made her decision. She would lead this charge alongside me. The power shifted between us like an electric current igniting old embers into flames once again. We were no longer just battling for a case. We were fighting for justice itself. But even as we prepared ourselves mentally for what lay ahead, doubt flickered around us like moths drawn to light. What if we failed? What if this protest spiraled out of control? A soft knock interrupted my racing thoughts. It was Sam, our youngest son, a boy who still saw things with unfiltered optimism despite his father's heavy burdens weighing down on him. "Dad? Mom?" he called out hesitantly from behind the door. "Can I come in?" Helen exchanged a worried glance with me as silence hung thick in the air. Did he know what was brewing outside? Would he understand why his parents were suddenly so tense? We stood frozen for a heartbeat longer than necessary before I finally found my voice again. "1 second, buddy." The sound of his footsteps growing impatiently close sent another wave of tension coursing through me. Could we shield him from what was truly happening? Or would he become part of this fight whether we wanted him to or not? As I turned back towards Helen, ready to share my fears and doubts about how much to reveal to Sam, something stirred deep inside me. A fierce resolve ignited by love and necessity alike. I stepped into the cramped motel room, the carpet sticky beneath my shoes, a scent of stale smoke lingering in the air. My heart thudded in my chest like a drum echoing through an empty hall. There, draped over the back of a worn chair, was my shirt, the one I hadn't seen in weeks. It felt like betrayal hanging there, an uninvited guest in this shadowy space. Kate and Sam were huddled together on the bed, their laughter abruptly silenced as they noticed me. The room seemed to shrink around us. I could almost hear the walls closing in. Anger surged within me, sharp and potent, but confusion held me back. "What's going on here?" I asked, my voice low, yet trembling with urgency. Kate's eyes darted to Sam before she spoke. "Bob, it's not what you think." Her tone was pleading, a desperate attempt to weave a web of reassurance that I wasn't ready to believe. I didn't need more words. I needed clarity. Yet here they were, tangled in their own deception. "Then explain why my shirt is here," I shot back. My hands clenched into fists at my sides as if they could contain the whirlwind of emotions threatening to spill over. The weight of her gaze felt like lead pressing down on me. Sam shifted uncomfortably, running a hand through his hair as if trying to untangle his thoughts. "We were just working on a project," he stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. The sincerity of his words hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire, fading quickly as reality set in. The desk clerk had confirmed it earlier. This room was booked under my burner number while I was at work. The realization hit me harder than any physical blow ever could. The very essence of honor that I'd worked so hard to uphold now lay shattered at my feet. My own life had been invaded by deceit. Kate took a step toward me, her expression shifting from panic to determination. "Bob," she said softly, "I made a mistake." Her admission hung heavy between us, like an unwelcome visitor who refused to leave. "But it can be fixed." I could see vulnerability etched across her face. Her lips quivered slightly, and her brow furrowed as she searched for understanding behind my stare. Yet every word felt like sand slipping through my fingers. Fixing this seemed impossible now. "Fixing it means you have to be honest," I replied slowly, each word weighted with gravity. "Who else knows about this?" Her eyes widened momentarily before she glanced back to Sam again, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them that ignited flames of doubt within me. "No one else knows," Kate finally admitted, but even then I sensed hesitation coating her words like fog obscuring clear skies. The silence stretched out painfully as we stood there, my world teetering on the edge of chaos while theirs remained cocooned in denial. What was once sacred began disintegrating right before my eyes, the threads of trust unraveling thread by thread. I took a deep breath and steeled myself against the rising tide of hurt swelling within me. "I need time," I managed finally, after what felt like hours lingered suspended within those four walls, trapping emotions far too complex for simple resolution. Time spent weighing options against consequences looming ahead, like dark clouds threatening storms above our heads, waiting patiently until we made our next move towards reconciliation, or ruin entirely depending on choices left unchecked thereafter. With that thought hanging heavy between us, I turned away from them both, momentarily allowing shockwaves reverberate through fragile bonds once thought unbreakable, now trembling perilously close towards fracture point where hope faded faster than light, escaping shadows cast upon lives intertwined amidst chaos, brewing beyond comprehension itself, turning everything upside down, leaving uncertainty lingering longer than anticipated, evoking questions without answers lurking just beyond reach, forever haunting memories forged amidst turmoil demanding resolution, yet offering none willingly. A bitter truth no one wanted confronting today, and perhaps never truly would. The tension in the room thickened, each breath feeling heavier than the last. I could hear a clock ticking somewhere, its rhythm a reminder of the urgency pressing down on us all. Helen stood there, her fingers gripping the edge of the table as if it were a lifeline. I could see her jaw clench and relax in rapid succession, battling with herself over what to do next. Her eyes darted from me to my old briefcase leaning against the wall, a relic of countless battles fought for justice. "Bob," Helen said, her voice steady despite the storm swirling within her, "we can't sit back any longer. We have to take action now." I nodded slowly, considering our options. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Taking action meant stepping into dangerous territory. In this line of work, hesitation can be fatal, but I also knew that waiting might seal our fate just as surely. Just then the door creaked open, and in walked Marcus, one of my interns. His youthful face flushed with excitement. He held a thick file tightly to his chest like a precious artifact. "Mr. Hayes, I found something!" he exclaimed. The shift was instantaneous. Hope flickered like a candle flame amidst the storm brewing outside her office windows. Helen's brow furrowed as she turned to Marcus, her curiosity piqued. "What is it?" she asked, leaning forward slightly. "Evidence," Marcus replied breathlessly, laying the file on the table between us with a flourish that seemed almost theatrical. As Helen flicked open the file, I felt a surge of anticipation wash over me. New information could change everything. It was as if we were standing at the edge of a precipice, ready to leap into unknown territory. Helen said, "Look at this," pointing out several highlighted passages in the documents before her. "This proves they've been systematically denying black families housing while approving white applicants without question." The implications reverberated through me like shockwaves from an explosion. This was not just another case, this was evidence of systemic injustice that demanded immediate attention. I caught Helen's gaze and saw determination reflected back at me. "We need to file for an emergency injunction," she declared decisively. "If we act fast enough, we can stop their practices right now." A new fire ignited within me at her words. This was exactly what we needed, a bold move that could turn the tide in our favor. The power dynamics began shifting already. I could feel it. The momentum was building behind us. But just as I opened my mouth to agree and strategize further, a loud knock echoed from behind us, a sound that felt ominous and intrusive. My heart sank. Whoever it was had perfect timing for a disruption. Helen glanced toward the door hesitantly while I moved closer to assess what lay beyond it, our sanctuary threatened once again by an unpredictable world outside our control. Then came another knock, more insistent this time, and my instincts kicked in like they always did during high-stakes moments. Something told me this wasn't just any visitor. We might be on borrowed time before answers fell into place or shattered around us like fragile glass underfoot. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it someone from opposing counsel? Perhaps even law enforcement? Whatever it was promised change, but not necessarily for the better. I turned back to Helen and Marcus, both of whom wore expressions mixing apprehension and defiance. This moment teetered precariously between opportunity and chaos, and none of us knew which way it would land next.
The faint hum of a distant air conditioner filled the dimly lit motel room, almost drowning out the chaos swirling in my mind. I stood there, frozen, grappling with the evidence laid before me. A shirt, one I thought lost forever, draped lazily over the back of a rickety chair like a ghost haunting my memories. The sight twisted something inside me, a gut feeling that churned and bubbled as if ready to burst. Kate had said she was working late. Those words now felt like shards of glass lodged in my throat. I picked up the shirt, its fabric rough against my fingertips, and inhaled deeply. The scent was unmistakable. Her perfume mixed with something else, something foreign. It was the smell of secrets, pungent and heavy, filling every corner of this small space. I heard footsteps approaching outside the door. My heart raced as I turned toward it, wondering if Kate would walk through that threshold with her easy smile, or if it would be Sam, the coworker she had mentioned so casually during our last dinner together. The door swung open with a creak that echoed like a warning bell through my thoughts. Sam stepped in first, his smile bright but disingenuous. Behind him came Kate, her eyes wide and alarmed at the sight before her, the half-open suitcase on the bed, and my hand clutching her shirt like it was a lifeline. "Bob!" Kate started, her voice trembling slightly as she processed the scene. "What are you doing here?" "Why don't you tell me?" I shot back, my voice low but steady. Anger simmered just beneath the surface. It was a volcano waiting for the right moment to erupt. Kate's gaze flickered to Sam before settling back on me, a silent plea for understanding written across her face. We were just— Just what? I interrupted sharply. You booked this room under my burner number while I was at work fighting for justice in other people's lives. What could possibly justify that? Sam shifted uncomfortably beside her, his presence suddenly weighing down the air between us like a lead balloon. He opened his mouth to speak, but closed it again quickly when he saw my expression harden into stone. You know what this looks like, I continued, pacing back and forth as anger surged through me like an electric current. You think I just fell off yesterday's truck? This isn't just some innocent mistake. I swear, it's not what you think, Kate implored, stepping closer to me as if trying to bridge an ever-widening chasm between us. But then, new information seeped into the cracks of our confrontation, a revelation that sent shockwaves through my resolve. The desk clerk confirmed it wasn't just any reservation. It had been made from our home Wi-Fi while I was slaving away at work fighting for justice in other people's lives. I could feel betrayal clawing its way up from my gut to wrap around my throat like barbed wire. This wasn't just about infidelity. It was about honor, mine crumbling before me as I stood lost in disbelief. In that moment of despair, clarity struck Kate like lightning hitting dry ground. She took a breath and straightened herself up, determination replacing fear in her eyes. "Bob," she said, slowly but firmly, "you deserve to know everything." Her decision hung heavily in the air between us as we held our breaths collectively. A fragile truce formed out of shared history and crumbled trust. As she began to recount what led us here, the late nights at work turning into secret meetings, my world tilted dangerously on its axis. Every word pulled another thread from our shared life, until all that remained was this raw truth hanging between us. In an instant, power shifted dramatically in that cramped motel room. No longer was I merely confronting them. I was being confronted by my own demons and failures too. The weight of their reality pressed down on me harder than any courtroom battle ever had. Kate's confession spiraled into an unexpected territory where vulnerability met anger head-on. The soft but potent tension shifted palpably. I felt both drawn to her honesty and repulsed by betrayal's sting. Yet even as everything unfolded around us, a cascade of emotions flooding through us, I couldn't shake off one nagging detail that kept swirling around in circles above our heads. Why had Sam been involved? What role did he play in this tangled web they'd woven? Each breath felt labored. Each heartbeat echoed loudly against walls painted with our shared memories, now tainted by doubt. As Kate continued speaking softly about how things got complicated between us over time, the emotional disconnects leading to desperate choices, I knew we were standing on shaky ground. I could choose revenge or forgiveness amidst all this turmoil wrapped tightly around us like barbed wire, cutting deeper with every pulse of tension coiling tighter within me. And yet still, what truly lay ahead remained shrouded in uncertainty. Even though answers were within reach tonight, would they lead to healing or destruction? Only time would tell how far down this rabbit hole would go before we emerged changed irrevocably by its depths lurking below our feet. The door creaked open, and there stood Helen, her face a mask of disbelief. I could see the weight of the world on her shoulders as she stared at me, confusion etching lines deeper than any wrinkle on my skin. "Bob, what do you mean they want to settle?" she finally said, her voice trembling like leaves in a gust of wind. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my own nerves. "They're offering us a figure that could make this all disappear," I replied, gesturing toward the stack of papers on the table. "But it comes with strings attached." Helen stepped into the room fully now, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor like an incoming storm. The tension was palpable. It hung between us like the sharp scent of ozone before rain. "What strings?" she said fiercely, determination blazing in her eyes. It was that fire in her that had drawn me to her years ago, a flame that refused to be extinguished by fear or compromise. "They want us to sign a non-disclosure agreement," I explained slowly, each word weighted with consequence. "If we take their money, we'd have to walk away from everything we fought for." Her expression shifted slightly as she absorbed my words. The flickering candlelight danced around the room, casting shadows that mirrored her inner turmoil. I felt a pang of regret. How had it come to this? Just then, my phone buzzed violently on the table, breaking through the charged silence like thunderclaps in a quiet sky. I glanced down at the screen. Another call from our lead witness, Marcus. He had been living under threats since he first agreed to testify against those who sought to silence him. "I need to take this," I said quickly and picked up the phone as Helen turned away from me slightly, fuming silently at my distraction. "Bob," she called out just as I pressed answer, "you need to focus. This is bigger than just us." But Marcus's voice burst through my earpiece like a tidal wave crashing over rocks. "Bob, they know about me," he shouted, panic lacing his tone. My heart raced as Helen's eyes widened with alarm. "What do you mean they know?" I asked sharply, concern flooding my veins. "They sent someone after me last night," he admitted breathlessly. "I barely got away." A chill settled over me as reality hit hard. Our fight was no longer confined to courtrooms and legal briefs, but extended into real danger for those involved. I looked at Helen. She seemed torn between anger and fear. "We can't back down now," she whispered fiercely, as if sensing my wavering resolve. Her fierce conviction sparked something within me. Perhaps we were not ready to fold yet. Decision made, I placed my phone down with renewed purpose and faced her directly. "Then let's confront them together. If they think they can intimidate us into silence, they're sorely mistaken." Helen nodded slowly but firmly, a glimmer of hope igniting in her eyes amidst the chaos swirling around us. Just then, there was a sharp knock at the door, a sound that echoed ominously like a warning bell ringing out in an empty field. We exchanged worried glances. Who could it be? My heart thumped heavily against my chest as dread washed over me once again. Whatever awaited us on the other side might change everything we'd worked so hard for, or worse still, put our lives at risk even further. As Helen moved cautiously toward the door, my mind raced with possibilities, allies, or adversaries. Each option carried its weight and repercussions heavy enough to crush dreams built over decades of struggle and sacrifice.
The wooden planks of the porch creaked under my weight as I leaned against the railing. The evening air was thick with humidity, wrapping around me like an old, familiar blanket. I could hear the distant laughter of neighbors, their voices mixing with the rustle of leaves in the breeze. As I shuffled through a stack of HOA letters, the edges felt rough against my fingertips. Each letter represented a clash, a disagreement about fences and lawns, but tonight they were just reminders of how tangled life had become. My friends were gathering, each one carrying their own burdens, but we all showed up for one another. Kate arrived first, her steps light despite the heaviness in her eyes. She offered a smile that didn't quite reach her lips. "Bob," she said softly, and I could sense her hesitation even before she reached me. "Hey, Kate," I replied, trying to match her tone. We exchanged a moment of silence that spoke volumes about our unspoken worries. Then Sam strolled in with his usual boisterous energy. "What's the fuss? You look like you've seen a ghost." He slapped me on the back, a gesture meant to lighten the mood, but only deepened my unease. "Just dealing with some HOA nonsense," I muttered, waving the letters like flags of surrender. "You know how it goes." I started sorting through them as if focusing on the mundane would ground me in reality, But every letter felt like a reminder of problems bigger than fences, a reflection of honor caught in a slow unraveling. Daniel brought out beers from the cooler he'd lugged along. "Cheers to surviving another HOA meeting," he called out with exaggerated cheerfulness. The clinking bottles echoed through the still evening air. Megan settled into a chair beside me, studying my face closely. "Bob," she began cautiously, "you don't seem like yourself." Her gentle probing was met with silence. I didn't know how to explain what weighed on my heart. Evan joined us last, his energy subdued compared to his usual self. He dropped down onto an empty chair and rubbed his temples, as if trying to massage away invisible pressure. "Man, it's been one hell of a week." I nodded, grateful for his honesty amidst our shared silence, each friend wrestling their own demons while we sat together as if that could somehow ease our burdens. Suddenly, Kate shifted in her seat and pointed at my stack of letters. "What's really going on? You've been acting different lately." Her question hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle. I hesitated before responding. Honesty felt heavy on my tongue. "It's just, everything feels messy right now." That admission cracked open something within Evan. He leaned forward eagerly. "Talk to us!" The sight of those letters reminded me of how fragile our connections could be, how easily misunderstandings could tear apart friendships or families if left unchecked. The metaphor hit hard. These letters weren't just disputes over property lines. They symbolized deeper struggles for respect and dignity among neighbors who ought to support one another. I took a breath and shared my concerns about Helen, how conversations had grown strained between us, and how shadows lurked behind every corner we turned together at home. "I feel like I'm losing touch," I confessed, as my voice trembled slightly despite my effort to remain steady. Meg reached out and placed her hand over mine, the warmth grounding me amid swirling doubts, but it was also comforting yet suffocating all at once, because they also held truth. I knew too well that facing challenges alone only magnified them. Daniel leaned back, fingers tapping rhythmically against his knee as he considered my words carefully before adding his thoughts into our growing dialogue. "Sometimes it helps to confront things head-on, instead of letting them stew." Their encouragement seeped into my bones like sunlight after a long winter's night. Maybe facing these issues wasn't just necessary, it might actually lead somewhere better than staying silent ever would. But then, I remembered how Helen had reacted when I tried broaching these topics before, her defensiveness making every conversation feel like an uphill battle where neither side truly listened anymore. "Yeah, but you don't know Helen like I do," I murmured quietly, as doubt crept back into focus, a gnawing worry that surfaced even amid camaraderie bred from years spent together under shared roofs and varying skies above us. As laughter broke through yet again among friends enjoying moments together outside life's stresses, and perhaps inspiring some hope for resolution, I recalled Helen's eyes when we discussed future plans or dreams we both once cherished equally. They dimmed lately beneath layers and layers, waiting patiently to be unwrapped one day soon enough. Yet what if those dreams had turned into ghosts haunting us both? The porch lights flickered gently overhead while conversations ebbed and flowed around me. And though reassurance shimmered briefly in pockets between smiles exchanged among friends gathered close together, it remained shadowed by uncertainty coloring every laugh echoing forth into nightfall ahead, nestled tightly within its folds, awaiting discovery just beyond sightlines cast outwards towards clearer horizons somewhere along paths still untraveled, together ahead, maybe one day ahead, soon enough. Perhaps someday soon indeed. The door swung open with a reluctant creak, revealing Helen, my oldest daughter. Her eyes were wide, as if she'd just seen the world's worst storm brewing on the horizon. The tension in the air felt thicker than molasses. Helen, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. My heart raced.
She was supposed to be at her class reunion, not here. What are you doing home? I had to come back, she replied, glancing nervously between me and her mother. I got your message. Before I could ask how she even knew about it, Helen stepped further inside, carrying an envelope that clutched tightly, like a secret too heavy for its paper. It was only then that I noticed the subtle tremor in her hands. Dad, we need to talk. She bit her lip, glancing over at Janet, who stood frozen by the window, as if trying to avoid the cyclone of emotions swirling around us. Helen, I said, but was cut off by a sharp intake of breath from Janet. She turned towards us, her eyes narrowing as if she were piecing together some puzzle that had been lost in time. What do you mean? Janet demanded, her voice unsteady yet laced with urgency. Helen took a deep breath and opened the envelope slowly, as though it contained a fragile artifact rather than mere paper. He told me about everything. I could feel my pulse quicken as dread settled heavily on my chest. This wasn't just about our family anymore. It was about the very principles we had fought so hard for in courtrooms across this country. Janet's expression shifted from confusion to realization, as if the weight of our past hung like a dark cloud overhead. You shouldn't have come here, she whispered harshly. I couldn't stay away, she shot back defensively, and raised the envelope high enough for both of us to see it clearly now. This is evidence from Mr. Thompson's case, the one you've been working on for years. In that moment, everything crystallized into sharp focus. I realized Helen was holding the key that could either unlock our future or shatter it entirely. Give me that! I reached out instinctively, but stopped short when I saw Helen flinch at my tone. No, you don't understand, she said with fury, mixed with fear lighting up her face. If you don't take this seriously, we'll lose everything. As she spoke those words, something within me cracked open like an egg dropped on concrete, raw and vulnerable, yet bursting with potential energy. I realized then what needed to be done. We needed unity more than ever before. Okay, I said slowly, letting my hand drop back down to my side. Let's sit down and go through this together. Just then there was a loud knock at the door that jolted us all back into reality, a sound heavy enough to rattle bones, yet light enough to carry an underlying sense of urgency. My gut twisted again as I shared a glance with Janet. We both knew who might be on the other side of that door. The stakes were rising faster than any tide I had encountered before. Every second stretched taut like a bowstring, ready to snap at any moment. Helen, I said urgently, while trying to mask my anxiety behind calm words, you need to hide that envelope. Her eyes widened, with understanding and fear alike. It was clear neither of us wanted anyone else knowing what lay within those pages, a truth that could tip our world upside down in an instant. As Helen slid behind me and tucked the envelope under her shirt just before another series of knocks erupted like thunder against our sanctuary walls, I couldn't shake off one lingering thought. What would happen if our secrets unraveled tonight?
The porch creaked under my weight, a familiar sound that once brought comfort. Now it felt like the world was shifting beneath me, each groan of the wood echoing my inner turmoil. I sat down in the old rocking chair, my father's chair, and let the gentle motion calm my racing thoughts. The evening air was warm, but held an undeniable chill, as if warning me of what lay ahead. I kept replaying the moment in the motel room, the revelation striking like a lightning bolt. The shirt draped over that rickety chair belonged to me, one I thought lost for good. I had stormed out after confronting Kate and her coworker. My hands trembled slightly as I recalled how their laughter filled the space between us like an unwelcome guest. It had been so easy for them to dismiss my feelings, but now I stood on this porch, questioning everything. Suddenly, a car door slammed down the street, pulling my attention from introspection. A couple passed by, laughing, their carefree chatter contrasting sharply with my spiraling thoughts. It made me realize how isolated I felt.
like I was watching life unfold through a foggy window while remaining trapped inside. The sharpness of Kate's betrayal cut deeper than I realized. It was more than just infidelity. It was an affront to our shared history and dreams. As an attorney who fought tirelessly for justice, I had always prided myself on honor and integrity. Yet here I was, feeling crushed under the weight of deceit. "Dad?" Evan's voice broke through my reverie. He had come outside without me noticing. His expression mirrored my own confusion and hurt, like a mirror reflecting pain back at me. I forced a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Just thinking." "About Mom?" he asked softly. There was no need for clarification. We both knew what had happened in that motel room. I took a deep breath and felt the warm air fill my lungs, expanding like a balloon ready to burst from too much pressure. "Yeah," I finally said. "You could say that." Evan walked over and leaned against the porch railing beside me. He looked out into the distance, searching for something in the twilight shadows that didn't exist anymore. Not for us, anyway. "What are you going to do?" he asked after a long pause. That question hung heavy between us, as if it were an anchor dragging us down into uncertainty. My mind darted back to that moment when the desk clerk confirmed the reservation was made using my burner number while I worked late at the office. That revelation sliced through any lingering doubt about Kate's loyalty. "I don't know yet," I admitted quietly, shifting in my seat as if trying to shake off a persistent ache. Evan turned toward me with concern etched across his youthful face, his brows knitted together like two pieces of fabric refusing to align properly. "You deserve better than this." His words rang true, but also echoed with despair. They reminded me of everything I'd built, only to see it crumble before my eyes. The family we created together now threatened by betrayal. A gust of wind rustled through the trees lining our yard, bringing with it a scent reminiscent of blooming magnolias mixed with something rotten, a metaphorical reminder of decay hidden within beauty. The juxtaposition made me shiver involuntarily, despite the warmth surrounding us. Maybe it was time for change. Maybe it was time to reclaim my life instead of standing still while everything unraveled around me like frayed threads on an old quilt. "Evan," I began slowly, choosing each word carefully, as though crafting arguments for court rather than speaking from emotion alone. "What do you think about leaving? Just taking some time away from all this?" He blinked at me in surprise. His youthful optimism flickered before settling into cautious contemplation. "You mean moving out? Or going somewhere else?"
"Somewhere else," I clarified softly, letting hope seep into my voice despite its fragility. "What about Mom?" he asked hesitantly, concern lacing his words. I inhaled deeply again, the familiar scent of grass and earth filling my senses, but this time there was something stronger underneath, determination simmering just below the surface, like molten lava waiting to erupt. "Maybe she needs space too," I replied finally, with newfound conviction coursing through each word spoken aloud, a declaration not only aimed at Evan, but also directed inwardly toward myself. It's okay to choose your own path, even if others disagree or misunderstand your motives. As silence settled over us once more, a cocoon wrapping around our shared vulnerability, I felt an unexpected sense of empowerment growing deep within me, as if reclaiming lost territory previously surrendered in moments spent tending to someone else's needs instead of nurturing one's own soul first. "What will you do about your job?" Evan asked, tentatively breaking through another layer of hesitation hanging between us, thick enough that even light struggled to penetrate its depths. "I might take some time off," I said thoughtfully, tapping my fingers against the worn wooden arms of my father's chair, nervously contemplating possibilities unfolding ahead like pages yet unread from a half-finished book. Pages filled with promise and unknowns, waiting patiently for resolution, eventually tied together by threads woven throughout every chapter lived until now. Before either one of us could speak further about plans forming, or perhaps unraveling, an unsettling thought pierced through the clarity gained moments earlier.
Would Kate fight back or accept defeat gracefully? Would she understand why this decision mattered so profoundly? The weight shifted again, the power dynamic altering subtly yet irrevocably, leaving behind lingering questions unaddressed, hanging in midair among swirling currents that carried remnants from past choices made poorly, alongside new aspirations, blossoming gradually toward brighter horizons, reached only by navigating treacherous waters ahead, fueled solely by resolve forged anew during trials faced head-on together despite uncertainty looming ever closer, still threatening to engulf us whole if allowed unchecked growth that might obscure the clarity we sought so desperately at last. And then came another realization. Perhaps facing those uncertainties wasn't such a terrible thing after all. It might become necessary fuel, igniting a fire beneath our feet, urging movement forward, propelling us toward desired destinations, whether clearly defined yet or simply imagined vividly somewhere far beyond the present circumstances endured silently day after day, until now. With renewed strength swelling deep within a heart borne forth amidst the chaos surrounding every aspect lived thus far, I resolved, silently, within confines held tightly close behind lips pressed firmly shut, until I was ready to release it upon a world awaiting transformation. A transformation planned meticulously, yet uncharted still, remaining elusive somehow, beckoning ever onward beyond limits imposed previously, limits set forth unwillingly and placed on shoulders stooped low, seeking solace found instead in the peaceful resting where once chaos ruled supreme. As night fell softly over our porch, bathed in gentle golden hues, slipping effortlessly into darkness that thickened around the edges, blurring lines separating pasts and futures intertwined, hopelessly bound forevermore. Questions lingered, suspended above our heads. They waited patiently to be answered, to reveal truths hidden beneath layers accumulated over years lived unknowingly, caught up in a tangled web spun deftly pretending normalcy existed and was maintained falsely, until it unraveled thunderously and finally erupted, exposing vulnerabilities long suppressed, yearning for recognition unveiled in a keen light that illuminated paths once shrouded within shadows. Those darkened corners now yearned to embrace the liberation awaited eagerly, promised someday, sooner rather than later, inevitably unfolding a destiny charted steadfastly and resolutely, prepared regardless of whatever storms might come crashing fiercely down, in relentless pursuit of the freedom sought fervently, demanded unapologetically.